Welcome to the inUpowers podcast, where we give a name and a face to emotion. We discuss the real and raw when it comes to mental and emotional health. We are here to teach you that emotions are information and behavior is a choice. We want to help you make safer connections through healthy communication by empowering you to understand what your emotions are telling you. I'm your host, Tammy Hymas. Let's get started. Welcome to this week's inUpowers podcast. This week, for our Moments Minute, we would like to talk about excuses. In fact, do you make excuses? When was the last time you made an excuse for something? And we want to talk about the real about excuses.
Well, for example, I have this blanket, and the excuse of why I have this blanket is because I'm freezing. We live in Idaho, and I am cold. So my excuse for having this blanket is because I'm cold.
And the heater's too noisy.
And the heater's too noisy to do the podcast. So I have a blanket because I'm a wimp when it comes to heat.
Is that an excuse or a reason? Because there's a big difference.
Oh, there is a big difference. Okay, so mine would be a reason. But I think sometimes in our minds, we get excuses and reasons mixed up. So the reason I have this blanket is because I'm cold.
Right.
But it's not an excuse.
Exactly.
So what is the difference then?
Well, what I have noticed in the world, and especially for me in particular, and when I've been developing the inUpowers and with the team and everything, one of the very first things I tell everyone is, just so you guys know, I don't read and write well. Like, I say it right from the very beginning because I have to send texts and emails, and we have to read over the material, and those things make me sick. For those of you who are new to the podcast, I am an epileptic and I have holes in the language center of my brain. And so when I read and write a lot, it makes me sick and I get headaches and it really starts to hurt me. However, when I was growing up, dyslexia didn't exist, and being an epileptic wasn't a reason not to read. And I'm articulate and I could learn when somebody verbally taught me. So I was always told I was smart, but not applying myself. And so I got really good at having to fight through that. But I know a lot of people that are be like, oh, I can't do that, I'm dyslexic, or I can't do that, I can't read. I can't do that, I can't do that. I'm an author and I have holes in the language center of my brain, which makes it hard for me to read and write. So is it an excuse or is it a reason? It's a reason. If I have a bad knee now that I shattered it on the mountain, the reason I can't ski is because my knee isn't strong enough to ski. It's not an excuse. It's why I can't do it. I can't reach the top shelf and my husband can because I'm shorter. Now, can I go get a ladder and do it? Yes. But it's a reason. It's the what makes me different in the world. It's not an excuse. An excuse is when I don't want to do the work. It seems like there's too much effort. It's too hard. I don't want to change my behavior. I don't want to grow. I don't want to find a way through. So I'm going to give you this excuse so I don't have to participate in a harder world. Is how I define the difference between excuses and reasons.
I think that's an amazing analogy and way to go. Because, the excuse like I didn't do my homework or the dog ate it, that kind of thing. And it's because we chose not to do it. Now, there's little legitimate reasons why we might not have done it, but sometimes we make excuses for our choices.
Right.
Right? Excuses for, like you said, because we don't want to change our behavior. And so we come up with these scenarios, these excuses of why we didn't do something or accomplish something or change something. And that's different than a reason.
Exactly.
For sure. Because I make excuses. I don't want to get up in the morning, right? I don't. So I'll make excuses of why I didn't get my bed made or why, because I was too tired. And it's really because I didn't want to get up. Right?
Because your bed feels so good when it's 1 in the morning. Especially if it's cold outside.
I'm not a morning person. But we can come up with excuses to excuse away the behavior.
Or the consequence of our behavior.
Yes. Well, they did this to me, so I'm going to do that to them.
Right. Or I didn't have that when I was growing up. So you don't have to have me like that now that you are growing up.
Right.
And there are those natural autopilots. However, we tend to use excuses. And I've noticed with excuses, they tend to be exaggerated.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a truth and a big exaggeration to get yourself by for not applying yourself 100% or making it so that life had a reason, like that people were less hard on you or the consequence was less hard on you.
Right. It's to make also to make yourself look better.
Right. It's pride.
You could have been late for something, and it's because you didn't do time management well. So it was the traffic, when really it's because you left 15 minutes late.
Right.
But it makes you look better by saying it was the traffic.
It's true.
And stuff. So it's just like our choices. It excuses away our choices, excuses the way we look at something or someone looks at us, and it's just excusing whatever it is. It's excusing it away so that you don't have to deal with it.
And the thing about that is it's really hard in life when you excuse everything away. Mm-hmm. Because you aren't putting yourself in the accountability spot. And what's really important with the inUpowers and the inUpowers cycle is every character has their own unique footprint and their own shoes and the way they leave the world. And the storms and our reactive, or what we call the in the way behaviors, they all leave debris and the world messier than they found it. Mm-hmm. However, all the proactive characters and the positive characters, which are our body organs, our brain, our heart, our lungs, our intestines, they're really cute. If you haven't looked at it, look at it. Mm-hmm. And they leave a brighter footprint. They leave a bigger footprint. And they leave a footprint that you would want to follow. And I think when you live a life without excuses, you have reasons and you're truly trying, you are an example of good. And not necessarily example of destruction. Because we can get caught up in it. We can get caught up in, well, this was hard and this made my life really bad and I don't have to show up like this because my parents didn't do this or my family didn't do this or I never had that. Then finding a different way through.
Yeah, I had foster kids one point, and she needed an IEP, and she was in junior high.
What's an IEP for those
IEP is an an individual education plan. For those who need a different type of education, they might have to go a different direction, and that's okay. And I told her that just because she needs an alternative path doesn't mean she can't make it. And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, okay, so there's a big party at the top of the building. And some of us get to take the elevator to the top, and some of us have to take the stairs. We can still get to the top. We just have a different way to get there. And sometimes we're on the stairs, and they're falling apart. And we have to, jump over things, and it's, so difficult and so hard. But we can still do it. We can still get there. And sometimes people in the elevator have to get off on the 7th floor. And sometimes other people can get on. We can't be good at everything.
No.
And I've talked to my students as well and saying, some of you are good at math. Some of you are good at history, some science, some reading. And that's okay. But when it comes to the other topics, you might have to take the stairs instead of the elevator.
And it's okay that it's hard.
Right.
But that doesn't give you an excuse not to do the hard.
That's right. And I think that's part of the problem is that the excuse, for some people, it gives them a reason not to have to do the hard and not have to be accountable for the hard.
Right.
I'm not going to do it because I can't.
I have met more people with the name of anxiety or depression than I have met any other name recently. I will have somebody introduce themselves to me and, "Hi, I have anxiety." Oh, okay. They don't give me their name. They don't tell me who they are. They don't tell me anything. They prep. They have anxiety. Now, when people work with me, I let them know my reason that my emails or my text messages might be a little curt or sound wrong, or I might forget the not or might forget the do, or the very important words. Not is an important word in a sentence that if you don't put it in, it messes everything up. But when I do that after they've met me, they meet me, Tammy. I am not my broken. It's a piece of me. and it's a reason why I do things differently, but it's not who I am. I'm not defined by what broke me. I'm defined by what I do, who I love, who I lift, who I build, and how I leave people feeling when I walk away.
So it's true. And I think we struggle with that. I think people have seen other people get away with things. And so they want to do the same thing. So then they've learned, because it's called learned behavior, to make excuses for their actions.
Right.
And that they're then not have to be accountable for that actions. And that's not how the real world works.
No. And even if you think you're getting away with it for a minute, you're not. Because if you excuse your life away, you've lost the life you could have.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've given yourself permission not to try. And you're giving yourself permission to be less than your potential.
Absolutely.
And our footprint and our example matters. And if we're always using excuses, or we're always finding who to blame instead of taking our own accountability, we are losing the ability to make a mistake and grow from it.
Exactly. You can't use an illness to keep you from growing and from succeeding and moving forward. You can't keep other people from, you can't use the excuse, well, such and such did this, or such and such this,
I did it all the time as a kid.
Right. Well,
they were doing it.
I know, right? We always blame our siblings and other people, right? So that we don't get in trouble. But you can't let others keep you from moving forward and from gaining your potential.
Right.
And stuff, because that's all it is. It's just an excuse after excuse. And then people get to know, they're just going to make an excuse. They're just going to make an excuse. And then you get that reputation. And you don't want it.
Well, and not only that, you reach out to somebody and they say they'll do it and they don't do it. And sometimes they don't have an excuse, or they just wait till the very last minute to tell you that they can't do it because they're scared to own up to their own reasons or their own life. And it's hard. It is hard to call your things things.
It is. Because you have to it puts you in a vulnerable position.
But not only that, the pride in my head
has
me, I can do it all. I can't. Like, I was literally just talking with Marcy, our graphic design, our creative director, about the website. And I had an idea about how we could do a button on the website. She's like, that's not going to work because they can't see it. And isn't that somebody else's job? Why are you doing it? And I was like, well, and I was excusing them because I had pride thinking I could make it easier for them, right?
Right.
And I hope that made sense. But I was in my head trying to figure out excuses, but the truth of the matter is it wasn't a very good idea, and the person that was doing it can. So why am I trying to do something they can do? I was taking it away from them too. And I was getting ready to have an excuse. Well, because of this or because of this, and it was wrong. And I had to be like, no, call thing a thing. You're right, Marcy. That is something they're good at. And you're right, Marcy, that my idea wasn't great. So instead of excusing myself, because that's what I was doing, I was having an moment trying to take away a burden from someone, and then just be like, no, I can't ask them to do that. I will. And it was very powerful. So instead of making an excuse, it almost like, and it was embarrassing. The pride piece was embarrassing.
And I think that's why we make excuses for things, like to make ourselves look good, right? Like I was saying that you're late for something, and it's because you didn't manage your time and you left late. And so then you blame it on traffic, so then you don't look so bad.
Right.
Because if I were to sit there and have to be honest and say, I sat in bed on my phone and time got away from me, and by the time I got in the shower and got ready, I'm now late, and I don't want people to know that I did that, so I'm, going to make an excuse. So then I don't look bad. And then I don't have to be accountable for my actions and my choices.
And I don't have to feel so bad in my heart.
Right.
About myself.
Exactly. Because then I'll start to believe it.
Right. And the natural consequences of telling the truth sometimes sting.
Yeah.
Although I have to tell you, I have a friend who is so candid. She'll be like, nope, didn't get out of bed. Sorry, didn't feel good. Like, and it's just, it is what it is. And it is so refreshing to talk to her. It's like she doesn't have malice or anything, but she just doesn't have pride. She's not in the way of herself. She's just very truthful. Sometimes too it feels too truthful, but she's
That's because we're not used to it.
It's true.
You know?
True.
I mean, seriously, we're not used to being honest with everybody. We're used to keeping some of those thoughts and feelings to ourselves.
Right.
Because of that pride, that embarrassment, that when you have someone who's willing to share that embarrassment and those faults with us, we're like, she really just do that? Like, she's okay with me knowing that she struggled getting out of bed, that we're not used to it. So it is refreshing because that's not how we normally talk. We don't just tell everybody our issues and stuff, except for closest friends and things like that. But you know what I'm saying? We're not used to expressing the truth and then getting a respectful response back.
Which is really sad because she's always getting a respectful response back to her truth. And when I have shared my truth, I don't have to hide or lie or remember this secret thought I had because I'm expressing honesty or I'm giving an honest reason instead of creating a bunch of I wish I could or should or I have an inflated idea in my head about who I am or what I can do. And then when I can't fit it all in, I fall short. And instead of taking accountability that I have limited abilities and actually saying no to something and continue to say yes to everything I can't do, then I've also created myself a problem. So really, excuses are lies to yourself and others. They're exaggerated truths.
They really are. And you have to remember that you are an example to others. In the classroom, I've seen kids come in with excuses, and I can tell they're an excuse their parents has used because that's not the same language that a 9-year-old would use. And so remember that you are an example to those around you, and especially your children. And so if you are making excuses for your behavior, what are you teaching your children to do? To make excuses for their behavior, and stuff. And I've seen it over and over again. Well, I have this, so, I can't get up on time. I need this amount of sleep, and so I wasn't able to do my homework. You hear them coming up with excuses all the time, but you can tell the ones that come from an adult saying it first. Wow. Just because the context is an adult language, not a kid's language. Does that make sense?
Totally.
And so just be careful and be aware of that and how that goes. When you sit there and say at home, I can't talk to this friend because blah, 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 blah. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't. Those around you are hearing that and they're learning from you. So then that's what they're learning. I can't.
Or the entitled way.
Yes.
Oh, well, they have all of this, so you can't do it, but they can. Like, oh, if you had more money or you had more time or if I had more of this, then I could. So my excuse is this isn't enough, so I'm subject to this lesser life. Or you deserve this. Those other ways of creating excuses as well.
Yes.
When you're not living in reality and you're blaming or shaming other people or yourself, or you're worried about shame, to get out of something instead of calling a thing a thing.
It's so true.
And that's a big thing for the inUpowers. We call a thing a thing. And if the thing is a hard thing, we still call it that.
Well, again, how are you expected to learn and grow? Right? If you don't go through the hard stuff. You don't get strong lifting marshmallows. I know I say that a lot.
I
but
love it.
If you don't go through the hard, then how are you going to be stronger on the other side?
Exactly.
And if you keep making excuses for everything, what have you learned?
Well, you're not getting on the other side.
Exactly.
Because you
You're
found
stuck.
that this is a very safe place.
Right.
So the challenge on this podcast and what we've been talking about is it an excuse or is it a reason?
Because there are reasons for things. The reason why I have my blanket is because I'm cold.
and the heater messes up our speakers. So
yeah. But it's not an excuse, right?
It's just
I'm
the way
not
it
trying to
is.
excuse away the cold or the behavior. It's a reason. So ask yourself, is it a reason or is it an excuse?
And if there is an autopilot excuse you have, I'm dumb, I can't read, I'm not smart, I can't write. Those would be the ones that I had when I was a little girl. And and my parents were not okay with it, but I couldn't find my way out. And I used that as an excuse for me to be dumb. I'm not dumb. I just do things differently. And the stairs are a lot harder to get to the top floor. But you know what? I'm pretty strong.
And you can still get there.
And I can still get to the party at the top of
the building.
Thank you. I was like, it was somewhere.
I knew where you were going. I knew where you were going.
Reading and writing is really, really hard. It's a sky rise. It's got hundreds of floors. But you can get there and you can make it. So pay attention. What is that auto excuse you have? And do you really need to exaggerate your story to make yourself feel better? Or can you call a thing a thing? That is the invitation this week. Find your excuse that is common for you and rewrite it. And remember,
emotions are information.
And behavior is a choice. See you next week.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the inUpowers podcast. We are grateful you are here. Please share this podcast with those you know who might need it, and follow and rate us so we can continue providing this podcast to you. Follow us on social media to see more visuals about the inUpowers, and join us next week for another episode. Until then, remember, the power to choose is in you.